Hello everybody. This is part 2 of my basic tarot tutorial series. I will link the first part in the description, so if you haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to check it out. And if you are interested in learning the tarot, and you're not here just to relax, then I suggest that you check out my Patreon page too, because my first milestone on Patreon, which is not too far away, is to create a 5-video tarot tutorial series on the structure of the tarot. And if you become a patron of mine, you're going to get instant access to those videos and many more. So today's topic is how to make connections in tarot. And what I mean by that, first of all, is how you can connect with your deck. Well, if you purchase a new deck and you want to establish some kind of a spiritual connection with the deck, the best practice that you can try is just simply shuffling the cards very thoroughly. Because when you first open a brand new deck, the cards are all in perfect order, and because the deck has never been used before, it's the best idea to give it a very thorough shuffle before you do anything. And I prefer to shuffle this way, but there are many people who do it otherwise, and there is really not a perfect way to do it. I prefer to do it this way because it's I believe that this preserves the cards best, so they don't get crumpled or injured in any way, and still they get the shuffle that they need in order to be refreshed and ready to be used. So once you're done with the shuffling, you fan the cards, or just simply pick one, the first one or the bottom one, and that is going to be going to represent your connection with the card. And I'm using this particular deck for this video because it's my very first deck that I've ever gotten, and it has enormous emotional value to me. And because this is one of the decks that I've done this with, and I would like to show you the card that I received for this very first reading. When it was given to me, was actually a gift from a very good friend of mine who started teaching me the tarot and who basically piqued my interest and made me become curious about the tarot. So the card that I got back then was the card of the Empress. And I think it's a very telling card because the Empress symbolizes creativity, growth, fertility, and some sort of a maternal connection. So when I drew this card, my friend told me that it is my duty and it's my purpose that I use this deck for healing people, and in return it's going to heal me and it's going to be like a mother to me. And she also told me that I need to focus my energies on telling the truth with these cards, but also telling the truth in a gentle, loving, and supportive way. So that is what the Empress is all about. So my point is that this is something that you can do if you feel guided to establish a connection with your deck. This way, it's a very good way to start the communication between you and the cards. But sometimes you might have the feeling that you are already clean and clear on what you want from the deck, what you expect it to be. You already have a connection, and in that case, you don't necessarily have to do this. Well, I believe that this is the beauty of tarot. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. It's all about feelings and intuitions and making connections. Very important, because the tarot is like a dialogue. It's a conversation between you and the deck. So it's very important that you have a good relationship with your deck, which obviously includes a good knowledge of each individual card, but it also represents an attitude. One important thing is not to overuse the cards. Just like in the previous example, when I told you that it's not necessary to draw a card each time you get a new deck. For example, when I got the Osho Zen Tarot, I felt like I was completely clear on what this deck meant to me, I've been wanting to purchase it for a long time, and when I got it, I immediately felt a connection, and I immediately knew how we're going to interact with each other. So I didn't do this, but still I have a good relationship with that deck. When it comes to making connections in tarot, it's also important to consider the internal structure of the tarot. So not only the deck itself, but the symbolic language of the cards. And as you might have noticed, the cards, they all have interesting archetypal symbols. And obviously each card deck is very different. And this particular one is kind of an advanced tarot deck. They usually recommend that beginning tarot readers start with the Rider-Waite deck. But I started my journey with this one, and still I survived, so nothing is set in stone. So back to the symbols here. So the tarot, as I've mentioned before, is like an imprint of universal human characteristics and life events and problems and situations. The tarot is always looking for the constant things that repeat themselves, patterns that are consistent throughout the journey of mankind. And therefore, it is important that whenever you look at a card and see a symbol in there, you try to look for universal connections first. For example, if you see the symbol of the sword, there's many ways to approach this symbol. For example, you might think of the Excalibur, this magical sword from the Celtic mythology, or you can think of the sword symbol from the Bible, where it meant logos, the word of God, intellect. There are many ways to make connections with universal, religious, or mythological elements. But when you do that, it's important to still try to remain personal somehow. So if you make those connections, make sure that you are looking for bridges between archetypal story and your own personal story. And it's also important to do this vice versa. So if you see something in a card that makes you think of something personal, for example, the rainbow. You went to kindergarten and there were rainbows on the walls. And when you see this card, this is the first thing that comes to your mind. It's okay. It's not a problem. In fact, it's a great thing to have authentic, personal connections and associations when you do readings. But it's also important to always refer back to the archetypal, the universal meanings, and try not to lose track of the bigger picture. Try not to get lost in your own personal mythology. And because it only makes sense using the tarot if you accept that your personal history, your personal journey is part of a bigger plan, and the things that happen to you, no matter how unique and personal they feel, they can be reflected and they can be connected with the ideas of the tarot, and therefore they can be connected with the history of the whole humankind. But at the same time, your life is special and unique, and it's a pattern, a combination that cannot be repeated. But you need to keep in mind that you're talking to the tarot, and the tarot is going to try to give you universal answers. Another important point about making connections is the different card combinations. It's very important to try to get sensitive and to try and gain some experience with how the cards interact with each other, how they communicate with each other when they are close. How does that change their individual energy? How does that change their meaning? Because it does. Each and every time, each card has a slightly different energy and a slightly different way of expressing its meaning when it is in the context of another card. And of course, you need to take into consideration the situation that you're reading for. So I might make another video on this topic, the card combinations. But before I wrap up this video, let me give you one more important piece of advice. If you are learning the tarot or trying to learn how to read the tarot, of course, in the beginning, it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with the basic ideas of each card and each suit and what the major and minor arcana represent. And when my video series is going to be ready, it's going to address these questions. But it's also important not to stop there. Do not get satisfied with the basic meanings. What you need to do is you need to establish a working connection with the tarot, a genuine, authentic connection. And the way to do that, in my opinion, is to do tarot journaling. It's simply the best way to make the tarot personal for you and to study it within the context of your own personal life. And it's best to have a dream journal and a tarot journal in one. And I think I'm going to make another video on that because it's an entire topic on its own. So watch out for that. I'm going to be posting videos more often from now on, I hope, because I have more time. And I hope to see you again soon.